6:51. Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Good morning to you if you're just joining us this morning. We've been chatting about some interesting topics, and another one that we're about to discuss is the state of public sector negotiations. And with me, I want to welcome the president of the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Cavell Joseph St. Omer. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcus.
And welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Well, it's good to have you here because I really want to understand exactly what it is going on between the government and the trade unions. They seem to be at an impasse, and I keep hearing about 2% and we're not taking that. And can you break down exactly what it is happening right now for us?
Well, I think it's important for the general public to understand from the get-go that there is a big distinction between public sector negotiations and private sector negotiations. In the private sector, I mean, I've done negotiations on behalf of organizations. I've settled 3 collective agreements, actually, in my career so far. And in the private sector, the board, in terms of the governance structure of that organization, the board would give the authority for you to negotiate on behalf of the organization and would set the parameters in terms of the maximum they're willing to settle at. But naturally, when negotiating, you try to get the best out of the negotiation process for both parties.
Well, everybody wants that. Right?
Yes. And then market forces tend to determine that settlement figure, you know, because companies have a lot of things to consider in terms of what drives their business, the operations. Profit and loss statements become very critical at that point in time. The public sector, there's some similarities, but it's not only market forces. There's the public interest that the government has to consider, the general feelings of the electorate, recognizing that it's taxpayers' money that is being utilized and you're committing funds for the future. So it's a lot more to consider because it actually becomes part of your political directorate, your mandate, in terms of how you treat with these negotiations. With respect to your question on the impasse now.
Well, just now, before we get to the impasse, I just want to be clear on, you said, you know, you would, like, for example, HR would be given the authority from the private sector, from the board, to be able to make those negotiations. Who makes those negotiations on behalf of the government?
Well, you have the chief personnel officer, in this case is Dr. Dindale, right? And the government will set the parameters because, remember, it affects the national budget, right? And the budget is debated and it is passed by Parliament, so it's part of the legislative process. So the CPU, representing the employer, which is the government in this case, has to work with the parameters given by the government, which is via the Ministry of Finance, who is managing the public's purse. So in this case, there isn't much wiggle room for the CPU, except there's a back and forth with dealing with the Ministry of Finance.
So in terms whatever the Ministry of Finance sets, that's where the buck stops?
Well, that's where the authority comes from, because you don't have the authority to get up one morning and settle an agreement at some ridiculous percentage, which is committing public funds, right? So the authority lies there, and the final settlement is in consultation with the Ministry of Finance.
All right. So then, is it that anything above 2% is ridiculous, a ridiculous percent, or how is it working with the impasse? What is the situation with the impasse?
Well, the thing is, everybody's saying it's ridiculous, right? But the Minister of Finance would have indicated the actual what that 2% means for the state in terms of public expenditure, and that 2% is almost in the billions or in the billions of dollars, right? And it's committing to not only settled on a back period, there's a back pay element to it for years, because remember, the agreements are usually behind, right? So they have to settle that period, and then you have to commit to paying that going forward. So there's the initial cash flow for the state in terms of paying out the money when you settle, and then committing to this new, because your terms and conditions will change, right? So you have to commit to that going forward, and we all know what a contract, I mean, you wouldn't want your employer to sign a contract with you and then get up one morning and say, here, what, I ain't paying that, right? So it means there's a commitment, and the state has to determine whether or not you could commit the funds. Now, everybody's talking about, it's an insult and all of that, but not recognizing we came out of a pandemic. A lot of money is spent actually in public health at this point in time. We have a productivity issue in the country, whether people want to admit it or not, right? And we have to make the cost of bringing public goods and services to the table more cost efficient and effective. So therefore, it's all these things. When you're making decisions, it's not just about 2%. It's a lot more you have to consider. Now, the collective bargaining and the impasse, you have to come to the table. I never knew collective bargaining meant going on march.
Well, that's what I was about to ask, is what is the right way in order for the workers, the public sector workers, who feel as though they're being slighted, who feel as though the cost of living is higher than this 2% proposed increase. That's what, I mean, that's what they claim and that they feel. But what is the best way to approach getting that rectified? Is it marching through the street support of Spain?
No, that's not where bargaining occurs. And the thing is, being back and forth at the table is not uncommon. You know, I mean, I told you, I've been through this. It sometimes takes months to settle, right? It's even on a larger scale with the public service, because look at how many unions, and they are set to commence again in June, this month, actually, it's the 1st of June today. So this month, and it's different interest groups, different sectors you have to settle on. So, but you have to come to the table. The conversation cannot be held on the streets. So, to me, the union was meant to now counter. There's an offer that was placed. You have to now put your arguments on the table, put your business case, and say to the state what it is. Why do you think 2% is an insult? And show your numbers. It's a numbers game. We do have a situation with the unions, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, in terms of not understanding financials and not understanding the implications. People think, okay, you hear a company make billions of dollars in profits, and they think that is in a bank account somewhere. It's cash, but that is not what it is. It's tied up in assets, it's tied up in receivables, it's tied up in so many things. So it's not that the cash is available to give all of this to the workers, but it's looking at, over time, doing increases that the company could sustain, because you can't renege on it. It's an agreement that is registered at the Ministry of Labor. You go down to the court, you could get a copy of any collective agreement, right? So it's actually part of the law. It's part of the Industrial Relations Act and the process. So it becomes law. So it's not something you just renege on, otherwise you'll end up with a dispute. So it's I just find it a bit interesting that this, which is a serious issue, right? Workers' interest is serious business. It's a serious issue, but you would find that it's being politicized, or it's being used for other purposes other than what the process is really there for. It's protected in law, and it's there for a reason. So let us come to the table and truly negotiate and understand the interests of both sides.
I think collective bargaining is something that we may need some more information on. I know that you guys have a course coming up, a 5-week course about collective bargaining, but industrial relations in general.
Industrial relations in general. Now, HERMAT, of course, we utilize, we try in all instances to get information for those who are in HR, but not only HR practitioners. So this industrial relations course, yes, we are the Human Resources Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, but our association is open to anyone who is in the business of managing people, human capital management. And this course is relevant to everyone. Understanding industrial relations, understanding how you treat with grievances, how you treat with negotiations and the collective bargaining process.
And where your rights are.
Yeah, and even understanding the Industrial Relations Act. This course will cover all of that and a lot more.
When is it happening?
So it's in July. It's 5 Saturdays. So it's just committing 5 Saturdays.
How long is each Saturday class?
Well, it's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
Right? But I guarantee you, Mr. Labadie, who is the IR consultant, who's facilitating on our behalf, he's excellent at what he does. Decades of experience. He retired. Now he's a full consultant and mediator, skilled mediator. And his mediation skills you'll get as well too, because that is what you need when you're negotiating as well.
When you're dealing with people, you need to mediate.
Correct.
How can we be a part of it? What's the cost of this? All that stuff. Give me the full details.
Sure. So for our members, it's $2,250. For non-members, it's $2,500. You could just email the secretariat at hermat.com to register your interest and to let us know you'd like to register. Also on all our social media, the link is there to register for the program. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're on all the platforms, LinkedIn, right? So you could access the information through that and even write in any of the directors of the board as well too. So, I mean, the information is out there to all those listening to this program this morning. It is not only for HR practitioners. CEOs, heads of department, everyone should understand what good industrial relations practice is, understand due process, how you deal with disciplinary issues. All of that will be covered in this program. So,
all right. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning and for sharing this information with us. And I think we can all benefit from learning a little bit more about industrial relations, especially the Industrial Relations Act, and of course collective bargaining and how to approach it going forward. So thank you very much, Cavell Joseph St. Omer, for joining us on the Now Morning Show yet again.
Thank you for having us. I feel like we're family now, to be honest.
Of course, and of course you're always welcome here.
Yes.
All right, well, that's the president of HRMAT, the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, joining us just to let us know about the state of the negotiations in the public sector, and of course the upcoming course that's happening in July that you want to be a part of. Just head across to all their social media and you can get more information. Stay tuned, it's the Now Morning Show. We take a break and come back with a ticket to give away for Soup 100 Jazz. Stay tuned.